Hey Math Heads. Today we are starting the process of learning to tell time. And telling time is something that takes a lot of real life practice. So no matter what we did in the classroom, no matter how many math pages you did and practice pages you did, it still really wouldn't matter unless you're looking at an actual clock and learning how to tell time. So if we were in the classroom, I actually have a clock for each of you to use. But since we're at home, you're just going to have to watch on mine. Now, you guys are used to telling time on probably a phone or a device or maybe at home on your microwave. And that gives us a time in numbers. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. So those times are really easy because all you have to do is read the numbers. And time is broken up into hours and minutes. So when we say what time it is, we say the hours first and the minutes second. On a clock that you're used to seeing, the clocks that are on our phones, telling time looks like this. There's two spaces, then there's a dot dot, and then there's two spaces again. And these two spaces over here mean the hour. And these two spaces over here mean the minutes. Okay, and our day always starts at 12 o'clock, which is kind of crazy. It doesn't start at 1 o'clock and it doesn't start at 0. It starts at 12 o'clock midnight, and we call that 12 o'clock a.m. I'm going to scoot over here. So each day, our day starts with 12 o'clock a.m. Okay, and that's when we're sleeping, hopefully. Let's see if I can move this up a little bit. And then it goes to 1 o'clock a.m., 2 o'clock a.m., 3 o'clock a.m., 4 o'clock a.m., 5 o'clock a.m., 6 o'clock a.m., 7 o'clock a.m., 8 o'clock a.m., 9 o'clock a.m., 10 o'clock a.m., 11 o'clock a.m. And then something happens. Then we're back to 12 o'clock. But this 12 o'clock becomes p.m. So we call this 12 o'clock up here. This one, I'll get a different color. And you can do this on a piece of paper with me if you want. That's what you would have been doing in the classroom. This 12 o'clock is called midnight. Okay, but then we have this 12 o'clock again. And this 12 o'clock we call noon. And now, once we start p.m., that means the second part of our day. So this was the first part of our day, and then the whole thing repeats in the second part of our day. So now look, now we have 1 o'clock p.m., 2 o'clock p.m., 3 o'clock p.m., 4 o'clock p.m., 5 o'clock p.m., 6 o'clock p.m., 7 o'clock p.m., 8 o'clock p.m., 9 o'clock p.m., 10 o'clock p.m., 11 o'clock p.m., and then we got all the way down to 11 o'clock, and boom, it would go back up here to our next day. So this right here is one full day. So you can kind of look at it and you can figure out what you do at all these times. Now we're in shelter in place, so a lot of our days seem to sort of mold together. We don't have such strict routines. But if you think back to when we were in school before, there was definitely a strict routine. We would start school around 8 o'clock a.m. And this is when we would come in and we would do our math, which means you probably woke up somewhere around 6 a.m., probably ate breakfast somewhere around 7 a.m. And then we went to school. This is around our recess time. This was our reading time. In between 11 and 12 was our lunch time. 12 would be when we were reading on the green carpet. And then in the afternoon, around 1 and 2 would be when we were doing our science or our social studies or going to music and library. So your school day was basically from here to here. This was the chunk of your day that you were at school. Which means down here afterwards, this is when you would have your sports practice, you would maybe do some reading and some homework, you would eat dinner, and then somewhere around probably 8 or 9 was your bedtime. So this is how our day goes. It's 24 hours. It's 2 sets of 12, okay? 2 sets of 12. AM comes first because the letter A is first in the alphabet. And then PM, that's an easy way to remember it. So when you wake up in the morning, it's AM. And when you go to sleep in the evening, it's PM. So these are the hours. But we have to learn to tell time. I'm going to scoot back over here on this type of clock. This is called an analog clock. And it's important because in life, you want to know big, giant math things like time and money. Time and money are things that you are going to use for the rest of your life. And you've already started using them right now. You know what time you want to wake up. You ask what time you get to go to bed. You want to watch a show. Things like that all revolve around time. You want to go to a birthday party. Well, you need to know what time it is. You can't just show up at a birthday party whenever you want. Time is so important. So we're going to start by looking at this analog clock. And what I would like for you to do is pause me and go get a piece of paper because I really want you to draw a clock today, okay? Because we're going to just talk about hours and minutes today. And then tomorrow and the next day, we'll do half hours. We'll do really how to tell time by minute. Today, we're just going to talk about the hours. These are our hours, and obviously that's sort of the plan each day is by hours, okay? So we're going to first draw a clock, and this is a really important thing to do so you can get familiar with a clock. It's really hard to learn how to tell time when you have no idea what a clock is all about. So it doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be a perfect circle, but what I want you to do on your piece of paper, I'm going to let a little bit more light in here, is I want you to draw a circle. That's not a very good circle. Kind of looks like Humpty Dumpty's head. That's okay. All right, now what we have to do is on any clock, there are 2 sets of numbers, okay? So let's look really closely at this. There's some big red numbers, and then there are some small blue numbers. Well, guess what? That makes perfect sense because we talked about when we tell time, there's 2 sets of numbers. There's hour and there's minutes. The same thing goes on here. This is like a puzzle. Basically, every time you tell time, you have to solve the puzzle. So on here, the first thing that you solve is the hour, because remember, the hour is our plan. So the hour is kind of our boss for the day, all right? We always talk about things in hours. We'll say, oh, I want to get to school around 8 o'clock, or, oh, the party's going to start at 2 o'clock. A lot of times we give our plan without talking about minutes. So the hour is the boss, okay? So the hour on this clock is in red. You see those? So what we're going to do is on our clock, I'm going to do it in red. You can do it in a pencil, you can do it in a crayon, you can do it however you want. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start by putting a 12 up at the top. Because remember, in time, we start with 12 o'clock a.m., that midnight time. And look, on my clock right here, the 12 is at the top. Now, if we tried just to draw our numbers all the way around, it would look all cattywampus and crazy. So I'm going to give you some tricks. The next number we're going to draw is the one that's straight down at the bottom. That's a 6. Okay? Put our 6 there, straight down at the bottom. It's kind of like north-south. Well, since we did north-south, you know, because you know about the wicked witches and the good witches of Oz, now we need to do east-west. So we look over here, there's a 3. Over here, there's a 9. We're going to do that same thing when we make our clock. 3, 9. Great. Now let's put a point in the middle. Now all we have to do is fill in the numbers in between. That's a little bit easier. It won't make our clock all messy. So 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's our clock. Now, on any given clock, there are 2 hands. Well, of course there are 2 hands. There are 2 sets of numbers. But we today are only dealing with the bossy numbers, the hours, right? These are our hours. All we want to know today is, how do I know on a clock what hour it is? And the way we tell that is by looking at, on any given analog clock, which is the circle clock, we look at the short hand. So the short hand is actually the boss. That is why on this clock you can see it's in red. Now, this clock is great for learning to tell time, but most likely this is not going to hang in your house. This is not going to hang in a classroom. Most of the time, both hands are black. So you have to think to yourself, which one is the boss? And you have to remember, oh yeah, the boss is the tiny little short guy. And he's the one that tells us what hour it is. Now, you have to think sort of as time during the day is a race. So this is what midnight looks like. This is 12 o'clock a.m. So let's look at where both our hands are. You can see, you can't even see the red hand. The red hand is behind the blue hand. That's because every time it's o'clock, the minute hand, this blue hand, is pointing straight up to the top. This is what o'clock looks like. Now you might say, Mrs. Minky, what on earth is o'clock? Well, look at all these numbers for a second. 1, 0, 0. 2, 0, 0. 3, 0, 0. 4, 0, 0. Oh, o'clock is the 0, 0. That's what that is. So here is 12 o'clock. Now I want you to watch what has to happen in order for it to get to 1 o'clock. Well, in order for it to turn into 1 o'clock, this minute hand has to run a race. He has to run 60 minutes in order for it to become 1 o'clock. So watch, when he starts, here he goes, 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 here he goes. Let's stop just right there, just for fun. He hasn't gone all the way around, but look at what happened to our hour hand. Do you see how our hour hand started to move a little bit? Now, is it on the 1 yet? No, because our minute hand hasn't run his full 60 minutes. But our hour hand is starting to get closer to the 1. It's not 1 yet. We're not allowed to say it's 1 yet. It's still 12. It's not 1 yet, and it's going to be 12 all the way until, bang, that red hour hand gets to the 1. So let's watch. Here he goes. He's going to still go, 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 go. Boom. Oh. 1 o'clock. So the minute hand ran 60 minutes all the way around the clock. And while he was running that 60 minutes, the hour hand moved over to the 1. Now we can say it's 1. But even when the minute hand was back here, we couldn't say it was 1 yet because he hadn't gotten all the way to the tippy top. He has to go all 60 minutes. So this is what 1 looks like. 1 o'clock. Our shorthand, the boss, is pointing to the 1, and the minute hand is up there at the 12. Okay, now let's watch what happens. He's going to run another 60 minutes. Here he goes, here he goes, here he goes, here he goes, here he goes. Let's stop it right there. Is it 2 yet? No way. It's not 2 yet because we haven't gone all the way up back to the tippy top. Here he goes. Ta-da! 2 o'clock. Let's watch him get to 3 o'clock. Ta-da! 3 o'clock. Ta-da! 4 o'clock. Ta-da! 5 o'clock. So the hours are pretty easy to tell. Cover those up down there. Sorry about that. Are pretty easy to tell on this kind of clock because we know that the hour hand is red and we know that that big blue minute hand has to go all the way around. So let's see, I'm going to give you one while you can't see it. Okay, pause it for a sec till you really know what it is. You think you know? Did you say 8 o'clock? Good job. This says 8 o'clock. Remember that o'clock is 2 zeros, right? 8 o'clock. Okay, let's try it again. Let's see if you can get this one. Okay, check where the boss is. The boss is on what number? The 10, right? So we would say this is 10 o'clock. Good job. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, get a good look. Remember, okay, the boss is the hour hand. Okay, there it is. It's 3 o'clock. Did you get it? Good job. So that is how we tell the hours. And most oftentimes when we ask for the time, grown-ups will give it to you in hours. The next part that we're going to hear a lot, or that you probably hear a lot, is people will say things like 2:30 or 4:30. Well, tomorrow we'll learn a little bit more about minutes. Because today we didn't learn about minutes at all. Today all we learned about is the hour hand and the minute hand. Okay, so I did both mine in black on here. So look, my hour hand is the short one, and it's pointing to the 5, and my minute hand is pointing up there to the top. So this is 5 o'clock. And the way I would write that is just like that, 5 o'clock. All right. So what I want you to do is try to find an analog clock in your house. I know it's really tricky. Some of us have them on the wall. I know we have one on the wall in our kitchen. That's an analog. I also know that I can set my watch to an analog clock. So ask your family if there is any way for you to get practice on an analog clock. And you don't need a ton of practice, but what you do need to do is maybe 1, 2, or maybe 3 times a day say, okay, I'm going to tell you what time it is off the analog clock and see if you can do it. In the classroom, it's so easy to get this practice because we have one on our wall. And next year, when you go into 2nd grade, you definitely want to be able to look up at that clock and tell time for yourself, because 2nd grade teachers will not tell you. So it's something that we learned in 1st grade, or we're supposed to learn in 1st grade. So that's why we've got to get lots of practice in, okay? So we will continue to work on it this week. So have fun and tell lots of time. There's no place like home. Miss you. Bye.